Hi, I'm Janelle, and you're listening to Season 2 of The Moment It Clicked. Is it really possible to feel like yourself in English? Can you truly express your passion and purpose authentically when talking about your business or project in another language? Today, we hear from Ola, who shares her experiences of running her business in her second language, English. It's a jam-packed episode, so please stay tuned. Grab yourself some mate, grab yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, whatever it is that you're doing, settle in because it's going to be a fantastic episode. Ola, welcome.
Hi Janelle. Hi everybody. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I'm so happy to have you on the show, and well, we will find out why in a little while, just how interested I am in hearing Ola's opinions about certain topics that we cover here on the podcast. But first, let's find out a little bit more about who this wonderful woman is. So
Oh,
tell us.
thank you so much. Well, I feel flattered. So, my name is Ola, and I have been connected to the world of languages for at least 16 years now. First, as a teacher, I taught all sorts of things, well, English, but to all sorts of people and in all sorts of contexts. I also worked as a teacher trainer for a bit of my career. I was a manager, I ran my own language school. So, I was kind of like on a journey of stepping higher and higher up a career, I would say, a very traditional career in the language field. But then at some point, and I always call it my pandemic move, when we realized, me and my family, we realized that we don't really want to live in London anymore. That's where we lived. I've decided to quit my stable job and start a business. So I first started an online language school where I hired a team, I had a business partner, and it was going very well, but it was also not the final thing. So in 2021, when we were fully settled in our new house at the seaside in the UK, I landed on a new idea to start a business coaching business. I know it always sounds a bit weird. And ever since, I've been helping language teachers and other professionals to either start or scale their language business. And when I first started, I was literally among a handful of people who were doing that. So definitely there is an element of trailblazing there, which is a word I really like in English. Um, and yeah, recently I've been going through a bit of a transition, wanting to also expand my business to other people, helping them with well, let's call them growing pains in a business journey. I also undertook a coaching qualification, so I'm becoming an accredited coach, because my work for the last 3 years has been mainly mentoring, I would say, and training. And now I'm definitely much more aligned with coaching. I never see things as a black or white, so I do a mixture of everything. But yeah, that's what I do, and I'm very, very, very satisfied with it. Language has always been a massive part because of that background. But yeah, here I am now.
Amazing, amazing. And tell me what languages you speak.
So I actually only speak two languages. I speak fluent Polish. I'm Polish originally, and I speak English. And I would say I've had a lot of reflections at the time when my son was very young. My son is 7 now, and there was this question whether myself and my husband, whether we should do anything to help him become bilingual. So we're both Polish, we live in England, so like, how do we approach this? And then we just let it go, and he kind of became bilingual by default. And I feel that this has also been my journey. I
Mm.
never really fully wanted to become bilingual. And I don't think I'm primarily, I think I call it like secondary bilingualism, but I feel as comfortable and confident in both languages.
Okay.
I had my history, a bit of a history with learning German. and that was a long part of my history, but it was a classical school example of learning a lot, but not speaking at all. So I
Mm.
probably have quite a high understanding, maybe even up to a B1 level. But to be
Mm.
honest, I could probably ask two questions and that's it. I do have a knack for languages. So when I go somewhere, there are things there are like I also learned a little bit of Spanish and like when I can connect the dots, I can
Mm.
understand, I can have a basic conversation with anyone. But to be honest, Polish and English are the only languages I actually speak.
Yeah. You've reminded me of an experience I had once on a Melbourne tram, heading to I don't know where, and sort of hearing these travelers sharing the space. They were speaking possibly German, possibly, well, I think it was German. And I was sort of listening because you can't avoid it. You're there in a
Mm,
sort of close space. And I was sort of like, hmm. And they were speaking about something to do with like the city. I don't know. It was very easy to understand in the context. I don't speak German. Like, I think I did a 6 months at school, like one semester at school in when I was 13 or something. So
mm,
I say that I've never learned German because, I don't remember much. But my mum is actually from Germany. She was born there, but moved to Australia when she was 2. So she didn't, we never spoke German at home or anything like that. It wasn't a part of our
mhm.
lives. As a parent, I don't think she thought, maybe one day my children will benefit from me speaking German at home or anything. It wasn't like a future
Yeah.
plan, but the European Union didn't exist. Our possibilities of becoming citizens by birthright or something, or
Yeah.
by generational, no, nothing, none of that. So anyway, but these friends were speaking and I was sort of like nodding, like subconsciously, and they were like, do you understand, like, do you speak German? And I was like, oh, no, actually, I don't. But I sort of understand what you're saying. Like, I was like, yeah, it is a
Yes.
beautiful city, isn't it? Like something like that. And they laughed and
I love that.
and said, wow, yeah, if depending on context, depending on that basic understanding of language, you are able to sort of pick things up. Like at least you think you know what they're talking about. Yeah.
Because I think language is so much more than just the words that people speak. There is a
Mm,
certain, like, well, people have a certain, like, I can only imagine myself in that situation and listening to those people would be like the way they were, like, even hand gestures and
yeah.
like the context in which they were in. Like,
Yeah.
it helps you guess. I
Yeah.
don't know if everybody feels this way, but definitely, yeah, I've always found it quite fascinating. Mm.
Yeah, it does help. There is something about it. So, thanks for bringing that memory back up because it was, there under the
Yeah.
surface. So excellent. So Polish and English, and you said that you don't really feel a difference when you speak one or the other. You're not more or less confident in one or the other. Did that take some kind of process, or was it this realization at some moment? Would you call this moment a sort of click where it all fell into place? How would you describe it?
So I like this is actually a very interesting question, and I've had some reflections around it, and I don't know if it was a specific moment of a click, but definitely there was some looking back and thinking, huh, yeah, I'm there. I'm like where a lot of people aspire to be in their language learning journeys, and I'm like, that was interesting, but I never actually consciously um tried to achieve that. So, but there were a few interesting things that, and there still are a few interesting things. So the way I see it is that depending on the context, the situation, or the what's currently required of me, I feel like this scale of being bilingual. So if we see this the if we see the bilingualism as a bit of a okay, so half of me is speaks Polish and half of me speaks English, then I see it as a little bit fluctuating and going
Mm,
one or way or the other. So for example, when I get really, really familiar with someone and they are an English speaker or a speaker of another language, but we share English, I when I'm very passionately speaking about something and we are extremely comfortable with each other, I might by accident, completely subconsciously drop in a Polish word. And I
mm.
honestly don't know how this happens. And I sometimes catch myself just before I say it, but very rarely, sometimes it just happens. And this person is like, And I went, oh yeah, this happens to me. So I think there is definitely an emotional link
Yeah.
to Polish because it's my mother tongue. Uh, so and that's funny. I find it just like, oh my God, it doesn't happen with everybody. It's some like I only once noticed that on my own podcast because I kind of like I don't really speak to anybody here, but it's such a safe, familiar space
Yeah.
that I'm like, have I just spoken a weird hedge word in Polish? Oh yeah, probably have. So yeah, that happens. But then on the other hand, for example, with English, I find it 10 times easier, and there is a obvious logical explanation for that. I find it 10 times easier to talk about business stuff in English. This is because I set up my business in English. I learned about business concepts in English.
Mm.
Um, and it's just so funny. But then there are other topics as well, like topics related to neurodivergence, topics related to, well, all sorts of like parenthood, childcare situations.
Yeah.
Because again, all those concepts, I think I explored them in depth when I was already living in the UK and it was in English. However, then my two most loved people, my husband and my son, they both are like we speak Polish at home.
Yeah.
My son is a funny case because, well, he mixes two languages. He could start a sentence in one language and then finish in another, and we don't even notice it
Yeah.
anymore. It's just a natural flow of the conversation. Um, so I think to answer your question and to round this up, what I just said, it's weird, it's fascinating, I have a lot of pleasure in how this feels and how flexible it all is.
Mm.
And I think the moment it clicked is a collection of moments. It's a
Yeah.
collection when I realized, oh, I dream in both languages. Oh, I can express things that are meaningful to me, sort of in both languages, but there will be pools of topics that I'm more comfortable with in Polish, and there are pools that are more comfortable in English.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm okay with that, and it's a fun
Mm.
realization. But yeah, that's my experience with bilingualism, let's say.
Yeah. It's very interesting having your son as that example, because it's sort of right in front of you, and that idea that you don't even notice those changes. At the moment, we're living here in Italy, and my husband is Argentinian, and we are here with one of his daughters. She's just turned 16. She didn't know any Italian when she arrived, and she started school, and we sort of were secretly really excited to have her speak Italian because
Yeah.
she has to learn. Firstly, she has to sort of survive the education system and learn, but we didn't want to make a big deal out of the fact that an Italian word would slip into the conversation we were having in Spanish. So sometimes now she'll be talking about something, and she'll like an Italian word will slip out, and we won't even celebrate it because we don't want her to like even
Yes.
realize it, because we don't want to make a big deal out of it. But
Yeah.
internally we're like, woohoo, she's getting it. She's yeah. And now it happens more and more, and it's yeah. But it is interesting to have that reflection of uh, how having that other language be incorporated into your life without you sort of realizing it. But
Yeah.
of course, then when she speaks about school now, she uses a lot of Italian words because those are the words that she knows how to use to describe that certain event. So it's very interesting to
Yeah.
watch.
Exactly. I have the same experience with my son who, like, there are certain things that he doesn't even know how to express in Polish, and he is sometimes interested, so he would ask. And it's interesting how, because a lot of people, I also this was particularly relevant when we were kind of considering what the right path would be if we want him to be um, bilingual. Because unfortunately, well, in my opinion, unfortunately, a lot of people of kids who are foreign here, who come from countries with quite niche languages, they kind of think there is no point because how is this going to be useful? Well, I have a much more Like I've got so many arguments why this is useful and beautiful and amazing, but I'm not going to convince anybody. But basically, what happened for us is that we just completely let go. We
Yeah.
stopped actually thinking consciously about it, and it just happened. And now what happens is that, well, I have to admit, my son is very emotionally intelligent. So he would, for example, we would have days when he would only speak English, and I would be like, fine, whatever. It's just one of those days. But then we would be like, oh, grandma and grandpa are coming soon, and they're Polish, they're from Poland. So he's like, oh, okay, so I need to do this in Polish because they won't understand. He will actually prepare himself. So I'm like, wow, like that
Wow.
is freedom in using a language, right? I
Yeah.
love this.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes when we visit Poland, his Polish is probably below the level of his peers. He makes mistakes. He's very creative in his use of the language, but it sounds a bit funny. It sounds a bit like um, Polish of a 4 or 5 year old, and he's 7. Um, but again, he feels motivated to speak it. Yeah, there is something magical about that idea of letting go, I think, and not putting
Mm.
pressure.
Interesting, so interesting. And I think when we learn a language, one of those, we often put that pressure on ourselves to, reach that level or to get to that, point where you will no longer, sort of your mistakes will not be so obvious or you won't even make mistakes anymore. And I think it's so unrealistic to have that. In fact, I guess that's how I realized that I had become fluent in Spanish. Not because I took a C1 level exam, for example, but because I realized that I could be myself. At least
Mm,
that's my gauge of fluency, at least for me.
yeah,
Yeah, to know that I can be myself or feel myself and that's enough for me. Yes, I could continue, of course, and I could continue in English, of course, and read more academic books and expand my vocabulary and download those apps where they say, okay, find the synonym of this particular word and things in English, because there are so many words that I don't know in English. There are so many words, surely, that you don't know in Polish. There's just so much to always learn, even in our first languages.
absolutely.
So
And
to
I don't
think,
think it's, yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, go on.
No, I think it's just unrealistic to be learning all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like I find it like I love learning new things, but at some point you just have to say, no, I'm not learning anymore. I'm just being in that.
Right.
So, like, I've always been intrigued and fascinated by the learning theories of the levels of competence. So the unconscious incompetence, then there is conscious incompetence, unconscious competence, and then conscious competence. And I think
Mm.
it's so much. It's very applicable to your language um, journeys. And I believe that what happens at some point is that, well, that idea of letting go, that idea of, oh, yeah, I'm already a speaker of that language, right? It's also my recent experience from doing my coaching diploma. A lot of people have been going through that on my course. A lot of people have been going through that phase of being very afraid of, oh my God, I'm about to go out to the wild world and coach people. And then our tutor said, but you're already a coach. Like, just, it's an identity. It's a process of learning, but it's also an identity that you have to assume as soon as possible.
Mm.
And I also see it in business. If you see yourself as a business owner, then yes, you will have to learn the steps of marketing, sales, and becoming better at it. Just like you have to learn the tenses to understand and like the skeleton of what the language is about. But at some point, you need to stop learning and just be with
Mm.
that. Mm.
A funny difference between something I learned in Spanish. When you start studying your degree, you already start to say that you are the thing, like, the title that you will get, for example. Whereas in English, you say, well, I am studying to be a doctor. But
Yes.
they will already start to include that title as a part of their, rather than saying they are studying.
Oh, that's so brilliant.
And it's like, wow, but you're not. Like, according to my train of like what I've been trained to think through my own language, you're not until you graduate. But who's to say that you aren't already as you are learning? And it's
No,
really
you're a
true.
speaker. Exactly. You're a speaker at A1 level, you're a
Yeah.
speaker at A2 level, and it's like nobody could tell you otherwise. I think it's about assuming. It's also psychologically very important that in order to, I think it's particularly applicable to skills like a language
Mm,
because it is about an identity shift that
mm,
we psychologically first tell ourselves that, well, it's possible. So, for example, for me, it's never really been, well, I'm lying. It's not that it's never been a goal, but to be honest, the goal to be fluent was only there at the very beginning. And then it kind of happened because of the career I chose and that kind of stuff.
mm,
But to be honest, I recognize that when I was moving to the UK in 2016, so that's 9 years ago, I was a speaker of the language, but I wasn't super fluent. I
no.
was good at it. I was even very good at it. I had all the certificates, but I was already a speaker. I was also
Mm,
already a teacher. And it's like you just add a little bit more, I guess, credibility to it, to that
mm,
identity. Um, but yeah, I think allowing yourself to see yourself as the final product
mm.
is super helpful.
Definitely, definitely. You mentioned this word credibility, and I wanted to hone in on that perhaps. And in terms of interacting with other people in your second language, or maybe it doesn't have to be a self-reflection, it could be your opinion in general based on the contact that you have with language learners. But do you think that we sort of lose power or authority or credibility in some way when we speak our second language?
Absolutely. I think it's a complex issue. So my personal experience is that for many years in the UK, even though my English was actually very, very good, very often so much better than an average Polish person who comes
Mm,
here. And that's not to criticize, that's just facts, right? I would have a thought, and this was literally going through my mind for years, that when I'm driving a car and I make a mistake, so like take a wrong turn or like change the lane too late or whatever, my thought would be, oh my God, I'm so glad those people don't know that I'm Polish because we're in separate cars,
yeah.
because then they would judge me even more for being stupid because I'm not from here.
Mm.
What a bloody, like, honestly, now that I say it, it's horrible.
It's
Um,
so like profound,
yeah.
so. Mm,
However, what I realized is that this is not purely me. This is not purely my mindset. It's a societal thing.
mm,
We are judged for our accents, for
mm.
things that we represent, for using the wrong words, for whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to give you an example, not from the realm of being a speaker of using a language as your second language. It also happens within speakers of the same language with different accents. This is a societal expectation, and
Mm,
we lose credibility because of there is a whole field of social linguistics, psycholinguistics, and all of that. And I think it's at great play. So, there is one thing, and that's the only thing we've got control over, that we kind of start seeing ourselves as good enough, basically.
mm.
But we can't help that people are going to judge us because people will judge us and people will see us and people will probably, like, I see it every day. There are mums of other Polish kids in my son's class, and we have a WhatsApp group where people share their opinions, share whatever. And when the Polish mums, whose English is around B1 level, so it's like communicative but not great, I can see how it's hard to communicate, how there are problems with like misinterpretation of things, how they are judged, how like all of that is absolutely at play.
Mm.
So the only thing we can do is kind of build that credibility inside us. Another
Mm.
thing is that I thought this is only, I used to think that this was only the case when you learn another language, when it's your second language. No, in the UK, I'm absolutely like, I'm gobsmacked how many people, for example, from the north, so I live in the south of England, are ashamed of their accent,
Yeah.
of sounding in a certain way that isn't received pronunciation. It's I had experience with training teachers from the north of England or Scottish people who would say, well, obviously I need to soften my or my accent. Obviously I need to get rid of it because otherwise people won't hire me. It wasn't even about not being misunderstood because yeah, there is an issue of intelligibility at times, but they were literally worried I'm not credible. I'm not
Wow.
going to be hired. I'm not going to get a job. So, so sad. And obviously, they didn't do it to themselves. It's years and years and years and years of hearing a certain message. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. There is so much that you've mentioned, and each part, like you said, has a different source almost. So it's not just what you have coming from a different country and having a different accent and it not being your first language, but also that, you know, that idea that you need to speak in a certain way in order to be believed as being professional or believed to be to have the value that you need within society in order to operate, you
oh,
know,
yeah.
on the same
Oh, yeah.
level. Um, one a lot of the times a lot of the time people will ask me if I'm really Australian because I don't sound Australian, but then at the same time they're like, lucky me because your accent is easy to understand. So it's sort of like are you complimenting me or are you
I feel the same because people say, oh my God, your English is so good. I don't want you to be saying my English is so good. I don't want you to be commenting on it at all because that makes me the other, right? I'm still part
exactly,
of the other.
exactly,
And that's a bit sad.
yeah.
So much prejudice.
Yeah. And but then here I am on the other side saying, okay, so it's interesting because from your perspective, you're coming from a the perspective of being the outsider, let's say, in within a society. You're living in the UK as a Polish person, whereas I'm like the Australian saying, in Australia, I would never judge somebody for how they spoke to me, and sort of being in the position of power, let's say, as the native speaker, and saying, okay, you're speaking my language, but I don't judge you for how you speak. But does that just make me a good person? Does that just make me a nice person? I don't know. When the whole society, in your experience, saying, you know, being worried that or being thankful that the person in the car next to you doesn't know where you're from in order for them not to judge you even further. It's like, wow, you know, that it's just such an interesting contrast between the two experiences. Of
Yeah.
course, now I have had that experience being a non-native Spanish speaker and wanting to say, for example, to somebody on the bus, I remember wanting to offer this older woman on the bus a seat because it had become, you know, disoccupied in front of me. And I thought, okay, I will offer it. So I said to this woman, like, excuse me, would you like to sit down? And she didn't, like, it could have been that she couldn't hear me,
Hmm.
but it's like when I spoke, people didn't hear me literally.
Ah,
Like it was like my voice wasn't on the same frequency, and people wouldn't like or just wouldn't understand that I was speaking. Like I don't know how to describe it, but like you would speak and they'd be like, sorry, what?
ah,
And somebody else next to me or even my partner or something would say like, no, like you said everything perfectly. Like it was perfect. There was not even a grammatical error, but they just didn't hear me. And then he
wow.
would say it or a friend would say the same thing and they'd be like, oh yeah, da, da, da. It's just a strange feeling to sort of
I
think that
know.
your voice doesn't cut through the noise because it sort
Yes.
of doesn't have the right sound, the whatever it is, it's just yeah.
It might not even be the accent. It might be, yeah. And it might not even be prejudice. It might be just, wow. You just really, maybe it's about conviction. Maybe it's about Because I noticed, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but before we started recording, you said something interesting about how you never question, like you just run your business, that I run my business in English and you don't even think about it, right? And I wonder where that comes from. Like it made me genuinely think, because definitely those thoughts are in my head that yes, I've got evidence that I can work with, for example, English native speakers. Like, in fact, I work with people from so many different places. And very often the non-native speakers compliment me on my accent, which is interesting. I don't really like, it's not that I don't welcome that, but I don't seek it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting where does that come from? That I get heard and
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know if I have an answer to that. The only thing that comes to my mind is conviction and maybe giving yourself permission to take up space in that language,
Mm. Yeah.
to be as legitimate of a user of it as anybody else.
Yeah. I think that could definitely come into play because I'm thinking as we speak, and I'm really going back to those. There were two moments specifically. I remember
Mm,
asking a bus driver something and offering this woman something, and it was basically like, "Are you going in that direction? Like, is this the bus that goes to that place?" And the guy was like, uh, I don't know. Yeah. And I really thought it had something to do with like the tone, like just cutting through the noise, like having
mm,
the sound that the Argentinians have when they speak, which is, there's just something about it that I thought it's just weird. Like, but,
yeah.
um, but yeah, I don't remember feeling like I was sort of speaking quietly or not asserting myself in that space to ask
Mm,
the bus driver if that was the direction they were going. I feel like it's like on a different level to that. But I
yeah.
do agree with you that there is certainly that part of, saying, here I am, like this is yeah, this is me speaking your language. um, so you operate your business in English. And so you use English every day. And have you ever sort of struggled or come into any roadblocks that you've had to sort of face in order to be successful in your business?
Um, I would say yes, definitely. There is a lot of doubt. There is a lot of, and I think, to be honest, because for many years now, nearly four, I've been in that space of language teaching, and obviously, very naturally, I attract a lot of English language teachers. And in that space, the conversation of being a native versus a non-native teacher, um, and a speaker and who has the right to use the language and all that, it's a very common topic. So I think I felt a little bit protected by that in a way, that, like I've got the right to do it because just how much my clients who are non-native English speakers or non-natives of other languages have the right to teach the language, right? I think that's a bit of a bubble in a way, in a very weird way. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm experiencing a little bit of a block now. So as I said, I'm expanding my business and it's very like it's quite misty. It's not fully formed as an idea yet in my mind. And there is definitely that fear like am I still going to be relevant? And with an addition of that, with my with where I come from, with the way I speak, with I know that I've got like a good record of being successful. I've got skills, I've got all the things that I can back myself up with. But there is definitely that voice that says, but who are you? Like, who are you? And like, are you only going to attract, because there is definitely some truth in business, especially attracting people who are quite similar to you in a certain way. So does that mean I'm going to attract people who are just like me? So for example, I can only work with Eastern Europeans or Europeans in general. Like, what does that mean? And I get lost in those stories sometimes. So sometimes I think my procrastination on getting clearer on that idea, which is something I really want to do, is definitely playing in my mind. It's I know myself and I know it won't stop me from going and getting what I want.
Yeah.
Uh, but it is a bit of a struggle. And I guess some other examples might be I feel that I'm quite a confident person and I'm confident in myself. I sometimes use that confidence as a little bit of a facade. That's also true. But on the other hand, it also helps. So for example, when I first in my current business in the one where I help language teachers, I first started running ads. That was an interesting experience because I would get a lot of trolls under my ads and a lot of people actually commenting on my pronunciation mistakes in my video ads. And I was
Wow.
like, so again, when I say that it's a bit of a bubble, it's true because then I would have my soldiers, my literally people, my fans, people who I worked with, go and protect me and go and defend me there. That like, who are you to say this? You're a teacher and you're literally, she's helping so many of us, da da da. And I was like, wow. So it feels a bit like a comfort zone because even though the trolls were horrible, like it's not a nice thing to hear. But
Mm.
on the other hand, I've always felt that people have my back.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, there is something interesting about it. And to be honest, I do have a bit of a rebel inside me as well. So sometimes I like to rub people the wrong way. I like to do things that might be annoying just because, well, if I want to do it, then maybe there are other people who want to do it. And if I could pave the way, then maybe they could just follow and do their own thing. And
Yeah.
that kind of brings me joy. So, yes, doubt is there. It's horrible. And I can see how it could stop people from being their true selves. But yeah, it would never stop me.
Yeah. So a part of your answer, from what I hear, is that sort of self-belief,
I think
knowing
so.
that you can, yeah, that you can and that you will, and that what might hurt in terms of comments only goes so deep because you have that self-belief that sort of keeps things at bay, and while it might
I
be
think so.
painful in or I don't know, you haven't used that word exactly, painful, but
Yeah, definitely. It is
mm,
painful in a way. Absolutely. And it's not something that I was born with, definitely not. And definitely, for example, if language learners are listening to this, they might think, oh, but that's impossible for me. But I think, honestly, part of it is that letting go
yeah.
again, and the fact that I'm not consciously trying to work on improving my language skills. So it's like a secondary problem, you know? I'm much
Mm,
more insecure about things that really matter to me as goals at the moment. So whether the
yeah.
business will work. So that's where my fears, my blocks come up
Mm,
in the language journey because it's, let's say, no longer something that I consciously pursue.
yeah.
It just happens and I'm finding it much easier to, well, push it away a bit.
Yeah, I find that so important to sort of highlight. I think it's like magnificent to think, okay, I'm, for example, an entrepreneur, or I'm a person who has a project and I want to share this with the rest of the world. I need English to do that, let's say, or I would like to use English to do that. And so that I can impact more people. Great. So, how do I go about doing that? Get the language level that I'm comfortable with so that, that needs to be a goal at some stage so you feel comfortable to express yourself. Not necessarily fluency, like I mentioned before in my own
Yeah.
experience, not having a certificate that tells me that I have this level, but feeling like myself in that
Yes.
language. And then what is more important is getting my message out there, and
Yeah.
and like that is actually the point of it
That
all,
is the goal.
not to use my perfect English to get that message across, but that message is understood by other people. And and if I can focus on that, then like you said, that's the point, that's the objective. It's not the language which is the objective, it's the getting yourself out there
Yeah.
so that you can
Yeah.
help more people. I found
Yeah.
that really, like, it seems so simple, but the way that you described it was so clear. Yeah, thank you.
No worries. I didn't even know I was going to say it, but that's genuinely how I feel about it. I think when the goal is to have more impact, when the goal is to like, because to me it was never an option. Am I going to run this business in Polish or am I going to run this in English? Well, obviously in English because that was not even a conversation in my head. It was I worked with so many people already that, yeah, I had those connections. So it wasn't an option to do it in Polish because that would just, yeah, eliminate so many amazing people from what I could do for them.
Mm,
So I just started doing that. And then I think it's all about backing yourself up. I really like this phrase because it's that self-belief, but also it's about learning enough skills of in anything, in
mm.
marketing, in sales, in English, in God knows what else, whatever else you need,
Yeah,
organization systems, whatever, to
yeah,
be able to back yourself up and to
yeah,
get that project going.
yeah.
Um, I've got a very pragmatic approach to anything, not a perfectionist at all. And I think maybe that helps.
Well, I have this slogan that it's not about perfection, it's about connection. Or
Yes,
it's about connection, not perfection, I
for
guess. Both
sure.
ways work. And that's sort of what I'm running with at the moment because I really feel like that is what is most important once we create that connection, which I think you do really well. Going back to this comment that I made earlier off camera, where I said, I don't look at you and see you as a Polish English speaker, for example, and say, wow, how great is her accent? Or look at those phrasal verbs or expressions that she's throwing out there. She's
Imagine
like,
that.
you said earlier, like, and I paved the way for others to follow. And I was like, if I were using this as an example for somebody taking an exam, I would be like, these are the things we need to include in our language. But I'm not listening to you thinking like, wow, what a great expression that she threw in there. Like, how accurate that, it's got nothing to do with how I see you. I
No.
just see you as this person who is so inspiring and motivating and
Oh.
easy to connect with. And I
Mm.
think that is, you know, um,
That also that give me that's an interesting comment because that gives me a lot of confidence for that new direction that maybe it is not about my mistakes, accents, where I come from, and all those things that always play something a little bit of a thing in my mind. Um, but about
in
that
all of our minds.
connection. Yeah, exactly. Um, I can imagine I'm probably one of many who has those kind of thoughts, but it's about that easy connection. It's about the energy of it. Well, I deeply believe it kind of made me think about your experience with the lady on a bus and the driver, that maybe it's about emitting a certain energy
Yeah.
as well. That, yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I was almost too polite, perhaps. Like,
Mhm.
excuse me, would you like to hey, send a did you like sit down or I'll take your seat? Like, which one
But
is
it's
it?
also interesting how you did it. It was such a brave move. And I think everybody who kind of like I still have those moments when I'm like, oh, I've just learned a new word from a TV series. I'm going to use it in a conversation. I don't think it very consciously, but it just is a little impulse, right? So next time I'm going to use it, but it's a risk. It's a bloody risk because I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm actually using it correctly, but I'm going to use it anyway. And then, because it's such a risk and such an unknown, we create a story around it. So if it's not received with fanfares and great, oh my God, what an expression! Like, if it's not, if we're not being applauded for it, then we think, oh, we've done something wrong. I better not do it, right? But it's about, I think success is about like taking those risks all the time, right?
Yeah,
And not
yeah,
waiting for the applause.
yeah. And that's so applicable. In the episode prior to yours, I spoke with a Slovenian girl, and she was saying the same. I just lost my train of thought. Hang on, it will come back to me. What did she say? Yeah, it'll. Never mind. Cut. One last topic that I really have this burning desire to know about is what it means for you to be creative.
Huh. Very good question. to me, creativity goes hand in hand with playfulness. So I like to be playful and cheeky and take risks and do things that are maybe a little bit forbidden
Mm,
and do things that only I know the outcome of.
mm.
So creativity for me is an act of, yes, it's an act of rebellion.
I love it. Oh,
I love it. Yeah.
I so identify with that.
I'm a bit of a maverick at heart and I like doing things my own way. So there is like my values are around independence, freedom, and just, yeah, doing things my way, which is all under the same umbrella, I guess. And it's always been one good example is how in the process of building my own business, I always thought, oh, I just want this sustainability and work-life balance. And then after only recently, I think last year, I realized, no, it's not about that. It's about having space to play. And that
Mm.
means playing with my family, but also playing in my business because I actually find my business quite interesting, quite like it's a project. It's a creative outlet for me.
Yeah.
But you know, without the foundation, I couldn't really do it because everything was about money and being making it more sustainable,
Mm.
backing myself up financially. Um, so creativity, I've reached that point of being able to access my creativity when I didn't have to worry about the things. So I could play in my business. I could play like I think even the expression on my head is the expression of that creativity inside me, that colorful nature that I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So yeah, the more freedom I have, the more I cannot act by the rules. And that brings out a lot of new ideas, new, just that fresh perspectives to my mind. Mm.
Yeah. Amazing. Yes. For those who don't have the video access, which by the way you can get by signing up to my newsletter. So www.english-creative.com. You can sign up for my newsletter and you will get access to the video versions with the captions also. But Ola has this fantastic hairdo. She's got a matching pink kind of jumper sweater
Yeah.
on and matching earrings with this beautiful shortcut pink hair, and she looks fabulous as always and very coordinated.
Thank you.
And so yes, when
Even
she
my
says
even my socks are pink.
your socks are
Oh, it's a whole thing.
you know,
It's a whole
you've got
thing.
to do what you've got to do. And, but yeah, I totally see that part of, you know, that creativity being expressed kind of externally as well, and that playfulness. So
Mm.
yes, I think it's fantastic. One more question. You mentioned at the very, you mentioned this book that has been something that relates to the podcast in terms of cultural identity or creativity, multilingualism, power, status. And you mentioned this book called The Culture Map. Can you tell us a bit about it and what you got out of it? What is it, the highlight?
Of course, yeah. So I have to be honest, my typical ADHD brain, I skimmed through the book, but I still found it very, very interesting. So the book shows, I think it's a very good book, especially for English native speakers, because it shows the whole range of different cultures. I think it's written a little bit from a perspective of growing up or knowing the Western culture quite a
Mm,
lot. And it
mm,
shows you that there are completely different perspectives in the world. And
mm,
I think it's just an interesting, it gave me that insight that, wow. So in many ways, the Western culture, in a way, and also, and by that, I mean also the English language, um, dominates in the world.
mm,
But that's why also it might be the case that other cultures feel a little bit insecure and other
mm.
people, speakers of other languages, feel a bit insecure because there is such dominance of everything and everything has to be so westernized, right? And
Yeah.
by westernized, I mainly mean well, American, maybe not even British, I would say. Don't know. So that kind of book, apart from it being quite useful for understanding how to approach, um, I think usually business relationships with people
Mm,
from different cultures. And
mm,
it gave examples of people from Russia, China, Japan, I think, all
mm,
sorts of different places.
mm.
Um, but my main takeaway was, huh, it's interesting that that people don't even have a reflection around that they assume that we all live in that bubble of the same understanding of social standards and stuff like that. So it just gave me that kind of like, huh, wow, okay, so
Yeah.
maybe we're not that connected. Maybe we don't like it. I always have to be reminded of the fact that we all have very different perspectives on things, and that very often my perspective might be, well, because of where I grew up, but also moved to the West, and like that, I might have quite a wide perspective, and that some people might not share it. So it might be a bit of a weird insight, but I think it's an interesting book to look into.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. I hadn't heard of it. I'm going to check it out. But I think that it's very relevant to my studies, social sciences, and
For
very
sure,
relevant to I guess, why I find language so interesting and
for
culture, which
sure.
go hand in hand, because there is certainly like language is an expression of culture, and that it's in fact just as a quick side note before we finish, I sometimes question with my business helping people to expand their businesses, their projects into English. I sort of sometimes put myself on the other side and say, but is it really necessary? Because why? I mean, does it have to be, Janelle? Like, do they have to, expand into English? They could just continue in Spanish. Like, am I sort of encouraging this globalization, which I may not necessarily
Mm,
agree with? Maybe there is. I mean, so only if you want to. I sort of feel like, okay, those who want to, yes, come and I will help you and we will have fun doing it and you will have huge success because of all of these things. But at the same time, like, you don't have to. I'm not telling you that this is the only option. You can stay in Spanish, you can stay local, you can help the people in your community. You don't need that, you don't need to become part of the dominant culture slash world. And yeah.
I have to say that I completely relate to that, because when in my business, when I have to kind of tell people that, well, basically tell them, hey, sign up to my courses because running your own teaching business is a really good way to become successful and more satisfied with your life. What I actually have to say in order for it to sound convincing that this is the only way.
Mm,
And then in my mind, I doubt, but I'm lying to them. There are so many ways. They could be working for someone, they could change careers, they could be a stay-at-home mom, and I still have those values. I still believe that choice is like freedom, value of freedom.
yeah.
But on the other hand, I do understand the rules of the world. And I think that
The
when
Western
you
world.
exactly, or even the rules of marketing, that when you give people what you've got to offer with conviction and the freedom to choose you, but not to come to you as a way of saying this will fix all your problems, that's a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
And then, even though I am not a fan of capitalism, I'm not a fan of, like, um, sleazy marketing and sales tactics. On the other hand, I teach people how to make money on others, on helping others. So, like, there is an element of that. And
Yeah.
I think it's just about keeping that in mind, giving people choice, but doing it with enough conviction so that they can do it, they can try it, and they can see if it's for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That helps. And I think
Only good people care about this stuff, I think, I find.
yeah, then everybody the rest who live in their bubbles or choose to live in their bubbles. It's an interesting topic, and I think because because English has become this, sort of dominant language, and it comes with this idea that we mentioned a little bit earlier about power and relationships. And I mean, power and status always exist in every interaction, as far as I'm concerned. But when we incorporate language into that as well, it sort of like ups the ante. It's sort of, I
Yes.
think, yeah, it sort of
Yeah.
intensifies that. And well, it has been so interesting to hear your perspective on all of these topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Such a good conversation.
So, a few quick favors before you go. I would absolutely love if you shared today's episode. You can send it to a friend, you can post it on social media, you can tell me where you're listening from, what your favorite part has been, or why someone else should listen to what Ola and I have had to say today. You can tag me on Instagram at English_creative_hub. It would mean so much to me if you would leave a rating and review. Do you have a story to share? Remember that you can apply to become a guest on this podcast at www.english-creative.com/podcast. Thanks for being here. Until next time.